All right, we are in a new location for Tuesday Tiger Talk. That means it's game week. Lots of excitement on these faces here. They're tired of writing about what might be, what's going to happen, what we think's going to happen. But we got a great opponent coming to Death Valley. All right, Will, we're going to start with you since you're tired. You just ran 100 yards to catch up with Katie and them and give them the bag, so I'm going to make you suffer a little bit here.
Thanks.
Tell me one of the things you heard today when we had our interviews with Coach Sweeney, Venables, and several players.
Well, I thought it was funny. I've actually, people probably remember this, I put this on the board, the comparison of Tajh Boyd and Kelly Bryant, how this kind of year reminds me a little bit of Tajh Boyd when his first year he started. And Coach Sweeney actually brought that up today, talking about how he remembers they got booed at halftime of the Wofford game. They were no, it was the Wofford game. I went and looked it up. It was the Wofford game.
Wait, did we say Tim Bray was wrong?
Yeah, Tim Bray.
Will Vandervoort said that?
Yeah, so if you read my story, it was the Wofford game. And Tim was there. Actually, me and Tim both clarified it together. But they were tied 21-21 to Wofford at halftime. They did trail against Troy at halftime, but they didn't get booed in that game. They got booed against Wofford when they were tied 21 all. Clemson had to score late and get a 2-point conversion to tie it, to make it 21-21 at the time.
Any game against either one opponent that they were trailing at halftime, they were probably getting booed.
Yeah, maybe so. But anyway, so the whole basis of the story, though, was Tajh struggled early in the first half of both those games, came out in the second half in both games and played well. But the first half he struggled, and so, Dabo kind of talked about that and comparing with Kelly Bryant is like, it's sort of the unknown. That year they thought Tajh was the guy, and he turned out to be the guy. But at halftime, they're sitting there in that Wofford game, and Dabo's looking at Chad Moore saying, hey, where's our quarterback? What happened to him? And Chad Moore's like, I don't know. Somebody kidnapped him. And, and so eventually they ended up coming back and winning those games. And Dabo says, though, but he knew all along, though, that Tajh was the guy. Then Tajh went on to have that record-breaking season. After that, beat Auburn the very next week. Coincidental. And then he rolled from that point on in the season. And so he's hoping that Kelly Bryant will do the same thing if he does face some adversity, that he'll do like Tajh did and he'll bounce back and show how good he is.
Let me ask you this. We've talked a little bit about this in the offseason, and this in regard to similar topic. Expectations are much different now than they were back when Tajh came along. And I don't think the fan base is going to be happy losing a game to Auburn when they feel like maybe the right quarterback's not in the game. Things are a little different now. Do you think Dabo will treat things differently now because of he knows he's got talent to play in a college football playoff than he did back in that when Tajh was coming along?
I think ultimately, yeah, but I think the first couple of games, I think they're going to probably stick with Kelly. I really believe that because they're going to try to give him as much chances as possible. Now, what I mean by that is if he struggles in the first game and then comes out and struggles maybe the first half, or they're losing to Auburn big, if you will, then I think you would see it probably the change happen if that's the case. But I think he's going to give him those first two games really to kind of see how he handles it, how he handles the adversity, how he bounces back, how the team bounces back. That's the thing with Deshaun. If people remember, Deshaun Watson wasn't perfect in his first couple of games, but Deshaun had that adversity hit him, a la Florida State down there, and look how he handled it. I mean, he came back and was just, we all know the rest of the story. And then that wasn't like Deshaun did anything wrong in that Florida State game, but the team lost the game, the fumble at the end. They could have crumbled. Instead, they didn't. They bounced back and beat the snot out of North Carolina and NC State the next couple of weeks. And so I think, he's going to give Kelly a little bit of wiggle room, I think, and see how he handles the adversity, and then he'll go from there. I think that's what he meant today when he was saying, let's see what happens when they play the games.
I think it's going to be interesting to see different stakes, different level of team now. I think a lot of people feel like had they started Deshaun for that Florida State game, they maybe win that game.
I think so, too.
Maybe you have a different result. Gavin, talk to us about one of the things you heard today.
Yeah. So Christian Wilkins, of course, as a freshman, played all defensive tackle. Last year, played all defensive end. Well, this year, based off what we heard today, it sounds like we're going to see him get some action, of course, inside, but also at some defensive end this season, too. Venables was asked just about the defensive end rotation and the inexperience but talent that he has at that position. And so with Wilkins, today he mentioned, he says Wilkins is probably going to have to play some at end this year to rotate in, because we've heard Venables and Dabo talk about how big of a loss Richard Yergin was. And so it sounds like Wilkins is going to see some action at end this season, going to be asked to help some of the young guys out there, just because there's so much talent, but inexperience is a factor too. And Venables wants to get those those young guys reps, but he also wants to have a guy like Wilkins who can go out there and he can rely on and just help provide some more depth out there. So it sounds like we're going to see him play all over the place this year.
Sounds like Dabo doing his Jim Harbaugh a little bit, Venables waiting until game week to kind of break that out on us. We've had a lot of interviews with Venables in the spring and in the fall. We haven't heard any discussion about Christian Wilkins playing defensive end. Now all of a sudden, here it is, game week. Let me slide that out there a little bit. Will, what's one of the other things you heard today?
Well, I think the common theme that we've heard the last 2 days was it's a windshield mentality, which means they're looking right in front of them. They're not looking too far down the road, and they're not looking behind them at the national championship. They're just worried about the first team, and that's Kent State, and winning this football game, which was something we didn't hear a lot of last year. It was all about that. I think they knew last year they had the team that could go play and win a national championship. And so it was more of they were trying to get back to that goal. Well, now I think it's more they realize, okay, there are some question marks, and if they're not 100% focused on that opponent, that they could lose the game. And I think the Pittsburgh loss still last year still lingers in that thought process too, because they realized they almost lost the opportunity last year to go back to the national championship.
And the NC State game.
And then because they were looking too far ahead. And so I don't think you're going to see that with this team this year. I kind of laugh when I hear people around the country and even some of the Clemson media somehow, well, yeah, Clemson's probably had that one game they stumble against. And I'm thinking, okay, what are you basing that on? They've only done that once since 2011, and they recovered from it, and then they beat the snot out of everybody after that. This team knows they don't have Deshaun Watson. This team knows they don't have Mike Williams. This team knows they don't have a Jordan Leggett. They have to be on from the beginning of every game and not put themselves in positions to lose like that, because those guys are so good that they could turn the ball over 4 or 5 times and recover from it and win. This team can't do that, not right now, and they can't put their defense in those situations. So they're going to have to be on from the beginning in every game, and so I think that windshield mentality is back at Clemson, and I think you're going to see one of those streaks again where they go 40-plus games against non-ranked opponents and start and beat them. I think that starts again this year.
All right, you heard it here first. I think that's right. We've heard the windshield thing for years, the talk, but this year carries a different significance coming off the national championship, and you can tell from every player talking about it. Dabo has, ingrained that in their thought process, and we'll see how that plays out this season. Gavin, what's another thing you heard today?
Well, it's no shocker really, considering this guy's a former 5-star recruit, but Venables had some praise for A.J. Terrell today. He was just talking about how when the back seven is in the meeting room, the secondary and the linebackers, when they're meeting, A.J. Terrell will be in there just kind of sitting by himself, and he said, Venables said that he'll kind of burn a hole through you. It just kind of, he's laser focused. Venables used words like coachable, instinctive, smart to describe him. Physical. He said he's really been physical, and his background, the coaching he got in high school has really helped him just understand the schemes and coverages, and that's allowed him just to play free and physical. And so Venables, he's going to be a guy that's, no surprise, but he's going to be a guy that's contributing in this year. Venables said we could win without him, but he makes us better. And he said that Terrell's been everything he thought they'd be so far. So he'd hoped they'd be. He'd hoped he would be so far. So he's one to watch out for. He's going to be fun to watch this year.
Yeah, it's high praise right there now. I'm going to tell you.
Yep.
When Brent Venables brings you up and says stuff like that, obviously you're doing something right in practice.
Well, and with the depth they have at corner, the fact that this guy's going to play this year says a lot, too.
Yeah.
All right, those are some of the highlights from our interviews today with our first season edition of TCI's Tuesday Tiger Talk. Stay tuned. We got a ton of stuff headed your way all week long, plenty of recruiting. Hopefully you're enjoying our Tour of Champions, trips like we did last night to go see Jamari Sawyer, our new Olympic sports coverage. Anything you want, Clemson Athletics, we got it covered for you right here at TCI. We will have much more later this week.